Mary Bruce, our chief White House correspondent, obviously covering any reaction from the White House, any reaction from President Biden. Has the Biden campaign engaged at all on the news just moments ago that the former president, for the first time in history, has been found guilty on 34 felony counts?
David, we are still awaiting any kind of official response from the campaign, though our team has heard that there were cheers inside the Biden headquarters in Wilmington as the verdict was read. Look, President Biden has been very careful in the last weeks not to comment on this trial. That, I have been told, will now change now that we have a verdict. Obviously, these guilty verdicts are a political gift to Democrats, a political gift to the president. He is now running against a convicted felon. But don't expect the president to completely upend his campaign messaging because of this, I am told. This verdict is not now going to somehow become the centerpiece of his messaging to the American people. The Biden team is very well aware of former President Trump's argument, as we just heard, his claims that this is all somehow rigged. The president doesn't want to be overly celebratory and feed in to that narrative that this was somehow a witch hunt concocted by President Biden. He has been adamant that he had nothing to do with this. He has said that he has never had a single conversation with anyone in his administration, with the Justice Department, anyone about Donald Trump's legal troubles. What you can expect the president do, though, is to continue to argue that Donald Trump, he believes, is unfit to serve, and he will make the argument that ultimately it is up to voters to decide Donald Trump's future. Because as we have been noted, even if he does face any kind of prison time, that is likely, unlikely, but even if it does happen, not likely to happen, certainly before an election. And so the president is going to make the argument that this ultimately comes down to the ballot.
With just a few seconds here, Mary, before I turn back to our courtroom reporters, President Biden has very rarely even addressed the fact that this criminal trial was taking place. At times you would report that he would say something along the lines of his opponent is tied up today, a sort of nod to a nudge, if you will, to the Trump campaign about what was playing out here in New York City. But other than that, there has been very little said about this criminal trial.
Yeah, he would subtly needle his opponent over this, right? We all recall when he had challenged him to that debate saying, I hear you're free on Wednesdays, which was the day that obviously court was not in session. But beyond that sort of subtle jabbing and not so subtle sort of jokes, you didn't hear the president really comment on the substance much because he wanted to keep his distance, because he didn't want to feed into that narrative that Trump and his supporters have been pushing, that this is all a political hit job. The president is going to react to this, I am told. The question is how he does it, in what form, and how, fiercely and forcefully he now brings this up on the campaign trail going forward. Just how much will Donald Trump, being a convicted felon, play a role? How much of a role will it play in the president's campaign speeches going forward? We are going to wait and see. Forgive me for constantly looking at my phone here, David, because we are expecting hopefully some kind of reaction from the campaign very soon. Stand by. It has actually just landed in our inbox. So if you bear with me here while I read this, this is a statement from the campaign communication director saying, in New York today, we saw that no one is above the law. Donald Trump has always mistakenly believed he would never face consequences for breaking the law for his own personal gain. But today's verdict does not change the fact that the American people face a simple reality. There is still only one way to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office, at the ballot box. Convicted felon or not, Trump will be the Republican nominee for president. He goes on to say that Trump poses to the threat that Trump poses to our democracy has never been greater. He says he is running an increasingly unhinged campaign of revenge and retribution, pledging to be a dictator on day one, calling for the Constitution to be terminated so he can regain and keep power. The statement concludes by saying a second Trump term means chaos, ripping away Americans' freedoms and fomenting political violence, and the American people will reject it this November. That is the official statement from the Biden-Harris campaign spokesman, David.
Mary Bruce with reaction.